Thanks for joining us at I Can Make Shoes. Today I'm going to show you how to make a pattern for a classic Chelsea boot. Okay, so in order to make the pattern for the Chelsea boot, you're going to need paper, a pencil, a craft knife, an eraser, some masking tape and a pair of scissors. So let's start by putting the paper to the side. We've got our last pre-taped up. Now what I've done is I've scrunched up some paper and I've attached it to one side. This is just to elevate the top of the last to give me a bit more height for the boot. As you'll notice, I've only done that on one side of the last, and that's because we're going to create the pattern just on one side and then flip it to get the other side of the boot. So how we'll start is by drawing on a front line down the front of the last. Just up to the paper, and we'll do the same thing at the back of the last here. Okay, so what we want to be doing now is drawing on the Chelsea boot on this side. So I'm going to start that by choosing my height. I usually start quite high and then we can come lower if we want to. So taking the pencil straight across the top, we'll draw on our design. Alright, so as you can see, I've drawn on a really basic Chelsea boot shape there. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a seam just down the side here. Now, you don't have to do this. The reason why you'll see that on most Chelsea boots is to be conservative with the leather that you're using, and also if you wanted to have a contrasting colour at the back and the front there. So once you're happy with the design, we'll then use the scissors and the craft knife to cut that out. So once you have cut out the main lines, we'll then peel it back off the last and stick it down to our paper. So before placing it down, I'm just going to now cut out the elastic section. Okay, so I'm simply going to place the taped area down onto the paper now. It's very important that you get this as flat as possible. In the toe area you may need to put a few slits to get around the curve. And the same with the back. Like so. Okay, now that we've got our pieces laid down on the paper, we're going to add in a few allowances. So what we've done with this Chelsea boot here is we've left raw edges. If you want to have a folded edge on that line, you can add a folding allowance onto those visible seams, onto the top lines there. We're not going to do that for this one. We're going to keep this as simple as possible. So the areas that we want to add allowances to are at obviously the seam here where these pieces join, and at the back and the front where they'll join the pieces for the other side of the boot. So I'm going to put in approximately 5 mil seam allowance on all of those sides. Now it's really important at this stage to just straighten up your lines as well if they need it. Okay, I'm also just going to outline the rest of the piece at the top here as well, even though we're keeping a raw edge, just so that it's all nice and neat for us to cut out. Okay, finally we're going to be putting our lasting allowance in. So I'm going to do about 25 mil approximately at the bottom there. And the same thing on this side here. It's really important that you follow the flow of the area that you're covering. Okay, now lastly it's important to label your patterns. So I'm just going to label this as a lasting allowance and as a seam allowance. It's also important to label how many pieces that you have. So although we've only made 2 pieces here, we're going to need to trace this out 4 times in order to get the other side of our boot. And then of course we have our whole other shoe to make. So you will in fact need 4 of these pieces for each shoe. Okay, and that's our completed pattern. Thanks for watching. For more videos, subscribe to our I Can Make Shoes YouTube channel.